Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our Civic Influencers Town Hall to support young people's voter registration and voter turnout in the presidential election. We're going to take just a minute or two to allow everyone to join us, and then we will get started. As you are joining, please feel free to share in the chat where you are joining us from today. We would love to hear where you are. And we will see it here on the hosts and panelists side and read some of those out as people are coming on board. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, San Francisco, Charlotte, North Carolina. So far, North Carolina is representing. Keep going. Los Angeles, Nashville, Orlando, Cleveland. Oh, they're coming in fast now. I love it. Philadelphia, DC, Florida, New York City, Fayetteville, Arkansas, Baltimore, Maryland, Staten Island. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Keep sharing those. We want to hear from where you're joining us this evening. We are so delighted to have you joining us tonight. My name is Erin Barnhart. I am the Chief of Organizing, Advocacy, and Learning here at Civic Influencers. And I want to thank you for joining us tonight for this town hall, where together we are going to discuss how young people are going to make history again during this November's elections by turning out in record numbers and swinging races in critical districts. Young people are depending on all of us to help power voter mobilization, education, and turnout efforts in tipping point states and districts across our nation. So during our time together, we invite you to join this conversation. Please use that chat. You can drop questions and comments. You can also use the Q&A feature. If you are sending them through chat, please send them to me. My name is Erin Barnhart, and I will be your Q&A moderator this evening as well. You can do this by clicking on the speech bubble icon at the bottom of your screen to send that as a chat. We're going to answer some of your questions on the call. We're also, if we don't get to your question, we'll follow up afterwards. As a friendly reminder, we are recording our town hall this evening, and we'll share it with you and our entire community following our time together. Should you wish to use closed captioning, that is enabled, so please feel free to do so. And before I pass the mic to our CEO, Maxim Thorne, or rather a video that we're going to watch first, I want to take a moment to thank everyone for being here this evening. And we have such exciting speakers for you that we're going to get to in just a minute. But I want to thank all of you for being here and for being such a critical part of our community. Our young civic influencers are absolutely amazing, and they are making a really big difference and history in this important moment. All thanks to you and your support. We could not do this without you, so thank you so much for being here. So now I would like to show you a short video about our work here at Civic Influencers.
At Civic Influencers, we recognize the passion that young people have on the issues they care about.
Education,
gerrymandering,
the planet, like sustainability reform,
the Fear the Vote Project,
with democracy under attack right now,
gun violence,
women's reproductive rights.
What can they do in those places that will actually work?
So often the youth is left out of the conversation, and we are the ones with the power, and we are the future.
Your work is ultimately about the protection of our democracy.
We are activating young people's civic power through organizing, advocacy, and learning.
Civic Influencers is data-driven. Most organizations and almost every campaign is overlooking the community college, the trade school.
Data is important to me because it forces me to think critically.
Data is a critical tool in the fight against systemic racism in the U.S.
Help marginalized communities connect with our civic engagement efforts.
The work that Civic Influencers does is not just important, it's critical to saving our democracy.
This organization focuses on it all year round, and so I think it's so integral in regards to moving this work forward.
What we do is we recognize that 4 million 17-year-olds become 18 every year. That means a whole generation, 4 million young people become voters every year. That is our future, and that's why we are doing what we're doing.
Thank you so much. And I would now like to pass it to Maxim Thorne, our CEO.
Hello, everyone. Thank you on behalf of all of America's young people. This is the moment to support their efforts to be heard, have their voices play a role in our democracy. Today, you are going to meet some of the most amazing young people that we have co-created so much of our strategy, so much of our digital organizing work, so much of our peer-to-peer organizing on these tipping point campuses. And you just heard about 4 million 18-year-olds who become eligible to vote this year. So just think about that for a second. 4 million 18-year-olds become eligible to vote this year. That means since 2016, when Donald Trump became president of the United States, that's 8 years ago, there have been 32 million young people who are now able to vote that were too young to vote for Donald Trump or anyone else. Now think about this other statistic, because we're data-driven, but it's exciting stuff. Every year, 2.5 million older people die. That means in the same 8 years, 20 million older folks have died. If you add that number to the net number of people who were too young to vote in 2016, that is 52 million people, a net of power for young voters. And that's what this is about. How do we give power and amplify the voting power and the voices of young people? And how we do that, you're going to hear by making sure young people in swing districts and states on what we call tipping point campuses. Those are the campuses that we've identified in these swing districts and states that they're on, and getting them to register, getting them to vote, getting them to do all the things that their peers and friends and sororities will need to be able to vote with powerful conviction in November. And just one last thing before I introduce our fabulous next speakers. In 2020, the presidential election, the last presidential election, there were congressional districts that were won by 6 votes. Not million, 6 votes. There were some that were won by 119 votes. There was one that was won by 133 votes. That is your dorm room. That is your sorority. That is the marching band and the gospel choir and the glee club. It's that kind of power that young people will realize that they can do to win for their issues, the House, the Senate, the presidency, or whatever else, the ballot initiatives that they care about. So let's go to our next group of guests. Elise. So I am so thrilled to introduce one of America's greatest leaders, a powerful figure, former governor of Vermont, former head of the Democratic National Convention, committee. Governor Dean has been a mentor to so many people, has been the roommate of one of my foremost mentors in political life. And Governor Dean is here tonight. It was his strategy, a 50-state strategy to get young people and others to be active across the entire country that transformed America. And he was the head of the DNC when Barack Obama was president. Governor Dean, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I'm allowed to take questions, but I did leave some time for it, if that's part of the program. So thank you for what you're doing. This is a really unique opportunity for your generation. And that what you're doing is incredibly important. We really do have to get marginal voters out. And the fact that Biden has removed himself from the campaign and we have somebody now who's almost exactly 20 years younger is going to make an enormous difference. And it already has. We already see enthusiasm. We already see Kamala Harris leading in a number of polls. So this is not, I'm not actually talking about partisanship, although I am definitely incredibly partisan. But what I am talking about is something that's been needed for a long time, and it speaks to my generation. We desperately need to change generations. We need to bring a new generation into power. And your generation can do that, can make that decision. I thought that Maxime's stats were very interesting about the politics of all this, but already we've seen a surge of enthusiasm. People your age are just plain turned off by people my age hanging on to power for too damn long. And that's just the way it is. We really desperately need 40-year-olds in charge of government, or 50-year-olds, or in the case of the president, 59-year-olds in charge of government, because there still are a few people of my generation and older thinking that they're going to win. And I think you have the power to make sure that that doesn't happen. And this isn't just about partisanship. It's about the future of the country. It is about democracy. That gets old after a while, but it's about whether you have the freedom to grow up in the country you have grown up in so far. You know, just when I was undergoing all the battles that 20-year-olds, boys undergo with their parents, my father looked at me one time and said, you know, I still have an advantage over you when I was about 25 and he was about 60. And I said, oh, yeah, what's that? And he said, I can look backwards as well as forward. Our generation did change the country. We protested against the Vietnam War. We eventually, when we got older, we elected the first Black president, although the generation ahead of you had a lot to do with that. And just so you know how far we've come, because it is easy for your generation to despair about how hard it is to get a house, how hard it is to get a job, the corruption of democracy at the highest levels. But when I was in school, when Ralph Dawson, my roommate that Maxime talked about, Ralph and two of our roommates, there were four of us, two white guys and two black guys. The black students had never been to school with a white student before. I had never been to school with a black student before. This is 1967 when we arrived at Yale. No women were graduated until we graduated in 1971, the first class at Yale to graduate women. There were very few women in Congress. Look now at the big differences. It's changed a lot. From your perspective, it's easy to despair because there is still plenty of corruption and plenty of problems in our government. But if you look at and someday you will have my perspective, the changes that have been made are enormous. In 1968, in the spring of our freshman year, Martin Luther King was assassinated. 99 cities were burned down, and I mean really burned. Washington, D.C. didn't recover for 25 years. The Chicago Convention nominated a Democrat in the back room who hadn't been in more than about 6 primaries. And if you would have told us that 40 years later we'd have a black president, we'd have laughed you right out of the room. And yet that is the change that our generation made. Your generation now has to come in behind mine. We're old and tired. We may try to pretend we're not, but we desperately need young people to take this country over, and only you can do that. So I want you to do 2 things. One, I want you to go out and grab every single person your age and explain to them that this is your moment. This is your moment to change the country, and you can do it. We did it. And now we're old and tired, and we're looking back like most old people and think we did everything right. We didn't. We need you to come in. We need your energy. But I don't just want you to settle this election by getting people out to vote. I want you to run for office. Maybe not this time. There's a great organization called Run for Something, and they recruit people just like you to run for office. And we're not talking about, oh, you're going to be 25 years old and you're going to be the president of the United States. First of all, that's unconstitutional. But we are talking about being the road commissioner and the school member of the school board and the city councilor. And that's how you build power. Believe me, this country looks far different in terms of the power structure than it did when I was your age. It looks like it needs changes to you, and you're right, it does. Our generation is not going to give you those changes. And you can make big changes at the top now by getting all your friends, whether, as Maxime said, sororities, fraternities, whatever it is, in the 10 states or so that are kind of swingy, particularly North Carolina, Virginia, Georgia. I'm not going to go through the whole name of them. You guys can do that. You can make that difference, but that is not enough. Then the next round, you're going to run for office. And I'm not kidding. And don't think you can't do it, because every generation does do it. And the faster you push us out, the better off the country's going to be, and the better off you're going to be. If you have time for comments and questions and rude remarks, I'll handle them all, but otherwise you may have another speaker. I don't know.
Thank you so much, Governor Dean. We will probably take one question, and we will have a big question and answer period at the end.
Okay.
So is there a question that we can share with Governor Dean? Because you may not be seeing it, Governor Dean, but the chat room has been blowing up with questions.
Yes, well, I'm so old, I don't know how to use tech properly, which is another reason you've got to push us to the side now. So you're gonna have to read me what's on the chat side, what's out in the chat room.
Erin, can you read a question for Governor Dean to answer?
I think they're still responding and reeling from your call to action, Governor Dean. So I don't have any distinct questions for you yet, but I think they're probably coming soon. So if you don't mind hanging out with us, we'll come back.
Okay, I'll be hanging around until the end of the meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Governor Dean. So this is a moment of a transfer of power between generations. This year, you folks know, is the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer 1964, where civil rights workers were murdered in Mississippi. But that transformed America, and we got the Civil Rights Act in 1964. We got the Voting Rights Act in 1965. This, for us at Civic Influencers, is the Let Freedom Ride to help young people protect, expand, secure their freedoms, the freedoms that you want, but you do it in the most wonderful way. So one of our strategies, before I introduce Javon and Jada, one of our strategies is to co-create these very innovative digital voting guides, digital voter registration guides, candidate guides, etc. And as Governor Dean said, we probably would never have come up with these. So here is one that I want to share with you.
Hey everyone, it's Nigel, the Civic Influencer. Come on, let's start my day. I'm running a bit behind. I know I got registered to vote though and got that out the way. Did you get registered to vote? Oh yeah, okay, good. Well, you know, the primary elections were just getting started. Well, they actually just passed. You didn't know about the primary elections? Oh my. Well, I think it's time for you to find the nearest voting coalition that's near you and really get informed about the information. Our votes are like our voices. It's like our megaphone to show our cause and what we care for and what we want to see changed, not just in our community, but in our world. So, I think it's about time that we all go look at the candidates and go look at who's running for what and why. A lot of people just like to focus on the party, whether it's Democrat, Republican, third party, but let's not focus on that this year. Let's not focus on that anymore. Let's focus on the person, what they're doing, and what they're trying to do.
Gen Z has engaged with us in what I call reverse mentoring. Howard Dean has been a mentor. His roommate has been my mentor. And now it's time for Gen Z to mentor us, as you've seen. So let me introduce Javon and Jada. Hi, guys. Wonderful to see you again. It is such a pleasure. So let me start with you, Jada. Jada, tell us who you are and where you are.
Hi, everyone. I am Jada Kelly, and I am a rising senior at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, Aggie Pride. And currently, I'm in Charlotte for my internship, but I'm very passionate about this work, so I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you, Jada. And Javon, where are you?
Hey everyone, I'm Javon Fields. I just graduated from Grand Valley State University. Right now, I currently reside in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been doing this work for a long time, and I'll continue to do this work to put our young people in the positions of power, but also educating them on their political power as well. So I'm happy to be here, happy to be here with Maxim, Jada, and the rest of you all to have this conversation.
And Javon, one of the things that I was so impressed with before you have moved on and stayed with us was your life at the community college. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I started off at Grand Rapids Community College because number one, it was cheap. It was cheaper, but also two, is that I needed to figure out what it is I want to do the rest of my life. And so that's a pretty big, challenging decision to make when you're 18, 19, just graduating high school. But my community college did a phenomenal job of not only showing me different opportunities that I can get into academically and professionally, but also to providing mentors, advisors that really showed me that I don't have potential, but I am potential, and I can do a lot of great things if I stick to it.
Okay. So Jada, great things. Tell folks about your work. You are in a very significant swing state, as is Javon, Michigan and North Carolina. How are you working with your peers? And have you experienced a shift in level of difficulty to engage young people before the sudden changes to today?
Thank you for that question. I would definitely say on my campus, being at an HBCU, you kind of have a different perspective. Some voters, especially like African American students, they have a different perspective where they're not really supportive of like the democracy and thinking that their vote matters and counts. So I have to do a lot of work where I have to kind of shed light on their perspective of like understanding that your vote does matter, your vote does count, and that they should be active in our democracy. So I do a lot of education work focusing on like educating them about, being a part of our local elections and our state elections to kind of get engaged because that kind of affects our students most directly instead of just the presidential elections. But I think now people are kind of getting more inspired to get involved with the voting with this overturn of having Kamala Harris run because now it's a younger person. This is something that they can relate to. She's also an HBCU grad, so this is really like engaging for our other HBCU students on my campus specifically. So I'm really excited to see this work. And I'm excited to go back on my campus because we're already starting the initiatives. We're already getting rolling on some of the event planning we're already going to do for the next semester. So I think that we're going to have a really great turnout. We've already been having conversations. We're trying to get more social media coverage to engage our students. And I think that this will be a better turnout for the next year because we have people that look like them running and HBC grads, and we're becoming to be more progressive in this next election. So I'm really excited for the next work.
So Jada, I wasn't going to do this, but I'll do it because it's you. Let's tease the audience about what you're trying to do in terms of social media, because you are one of our greatest influencers. You have over 40,000 folks who are following you on North Carolina A&T and the community. And where are you next trying to go in August?
In August, I really want to go and attend the DNC in Chicago. I think this would be a great opportunity for me to highlight my social media skills, to meet new legislators and people that are in power, and to just network and be a part of the experience. I've never been to a convention of this magnitude, and I think this would be really great for me to explore and to grow myself. So I'm really excited to be able to be a part of this next experience.
And how do you think your audience, your peers would react to you being there and sharing the stories of what's going on and meeting various other young people and powerful figures and iconic figures like Governor Dean? How do you think they would react to that?
I would first off say that whenever people see that you're actually doing the groundwork and you're actually going to these conventions, I think my following will really have a positive impact to see that I'm very passionate about it, to see me there at the convention first and foremost. But then I also think that this will kind of like inspire them that this could be them as well. Like as a peer, I'm just an average college student as well, so they might get inspired to get a part of this work. I know that I was telling you before, I got inspired with this work just as a freshman early on. I really didn't have an interest, or not even an interest, but a knowledge of civic engagement early on whenever I started college. And I kind of got involved with this work as I've gone through college this whole time. And that's really inspired me, and it's been really impactful, and I love being a part of Civic Influencers. So I want other students to know that they can be a part of this work, they can become a part of this movement, and they can get active. And just like Governor Dean said, like, we want people to go and be ignited and start running for office as well. So I hope that I can just be a role model for other students to get engaged and involved with this movement.
Okay. So I'm going to pause here a second, let the audience know that we have scheduled the most amazing, incredible champion who was a school teacher and has had the most incredible career. From a school teacher mentoring lots of young people in South Carolina, himself running for office, himself formally becoming the majority whip in Congress, and then later the assistant leader. He is supposed to show up if he is on Air Force One or after Air Force One and he lands at 8:30. So I'm pausing here to ask Elisa Erin if he's arrived. Not yet. Okay, so let's go on. And his name, of course, is Congressman James Clyburn. So, Javon, you've heard Jada. And I know, well, let's tell everyone, what are your plans? What do you think would really excite other young people in the swing state of Michigan? Where would you like to go in August?
Yeah, so the direction I'm heading in is more the educational piece, right? So understanding how to vote, why do you vote, where do you vote, when do you vote? I can't tell you who to vote for, but we can always look at the ballot before you go out there and vote. Always tell their story. When I was working to get young people out to vote in 2020, we had one of the largest young voter turnouts we've ever seen, right? Uh, Especially here in Michigan. And so at the time, I was the president of the NAACP Grand Rapids Youth Council. I had a lot of my youth council members and a lot of my friends and family go out there to vote for the first time, including myself, first time voter, 2020. And so we did all of this, get out to vote, vote or die, your vote matters, your ancestors died for your right to vote, all these different sayings, right? And so we had all these people go out there and vote in 2020 for the presidential election. When we had our youth council debrief of upwards of 50 people, of young people, first time voters, a lot of them told me, Javon, I was fired up. I was ready to go. I went to the polls and I stood in line and I waited and voted and got my sticker. But you didn't tell me that there were other things on the ballot besides just the president. And so I thought back to myself and I said, yeah, I didn't educate a lot of my peers about, okay, yeah, there is the state senator on the ballot, your sheriff, circuit court judges, right, that you can vote for, school board. There are different things on the ballot, especially people who affect you directly starting now, right? And so there's a lot of hype around presidential elections. In 2024, my focus is let me get you fired up. Let's go out there and get to the polls. But let's have a strategic plan before we get to the polls. I don't want you going there guessing, just checking out boxes and to get your sticker. I really want you to have a game plan as you go in there in these polling sites, because the truth of the matter is a lot of these polling locations got a lot of older people who don't want to deal with young people, right? They don't want to deal with you. They like, what precinct you going? What ward are you in? What precinct? Come on, right? Speed it up. And so there's not a lot of help there, which is another issue, right? But I want our young people to know what the plan is, know what we want to vote for. I can't tell you what to vote for, but I can show you what's on the ballot, right? And it's much more than just the president. And depending on where you live, like me, for example, my district or my ward, we got the state senator, we have mayor candidates, right? The first time we're voting for a mayor since 2016. And we have 4 different candidates, right? The most we ever seen since 2016. And we have the sheriff, we have circuit court judges, school board. Those are individuals who impact you directly today. So education, right? As well as getting them fired up and being interested in voting.
Thank you, Javon. So think, folks, if you're trying to fund, because Javon gets paid, Jada gets paid, and everyone We need these young people to feel that we care about them and we are going to equip them financially, with transportation, with food, with all kinds of things so that they can engage their peers. Imagine 1,000 Javons and Jadas in every battleground state and covering swing districts and what they're able to do at this point of momentum. And the mood is shifting. So I am now going to ask a wonderful family from California. And one of the things you will see is how dedicated folks are. Dedicated folks are, whether they live in California or New York, or Washington State, or Florida, or Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, North Carolina, and Wisconsin. We're all in this together, and we're supporting these young people, especially when where they can make the greatest impact in swing states and districts. So,
Maxim,
yes?
Sorry to interrupt you. We have a special guest ready to join.
All right, please bring on the great Congressman James Clyburn. Congressman Clyburn, I am so thrilled. I cannot tell you how much I've been beaten up by Ralph over the years. Over the years, since I was like 18 years old, just entering college. And what an inspiration Ralph has. And Ralph has said to me, what an inspiration, of course, as a young man, a young person from South Carolina, you have been to him and so many others. You have been a school teacher. You rose to become a congressman. You became majority whip and assistant leader in Congress. We are so thrilled to have you because you are a symbol of what has been achieved in even more difficult times. But this is a really difficult time right now. And I would like you to share with young people in our audience what this moment means for this generation, particularly of young people in these battleground districts, young people of color, the LGBTQIA community, the disability community, etc., for them to have their voices heard. Congressman Clyburn.
Well, thank you very, very much for having me.
Oh, and one second. Are you on Air Force One?
Not tonight, not tonight. I'm about to go to catch a commercial flight back to South Carolina tonight. But I did have a great day and evening and a little bit of this morning with President Joe Biden as we went down to Austin, Texas to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And he gave an incredible speech talking about what existed then and the challenges that we have today. And let me say this to the young people who are there. I can remember very well, starting out with John Lewis, when the two of us were 19-year-old college students. We had no idea back in 1960 when we were sitting in, waiting in, praying in, and doing all of those things that we thought were necessary in order to make life better for our children and grandchildren. I now have grandchildren and even a great-grand. And I do believe that the sacrifices we made then are paying off today for those young people. And it's paying off for the young people who are there with you, participating in here this evening. But let me say to you what I said to Ralph, who I taught when he was a 10th grader, a little younger than you were when you first met him. I used to say to those students, anything that's happened before can happen again. And I want the young people who are participating in this session to know that after the Civil War, we went into a period that we call Reconstruction. And during that period of Reconstruction, all of the citizenship rights that belong to non-Blacks were made available to Blacks after the war. that happened for 13 years. But Reconstruction came to an end after 13 years of full participation. And in 1877, the so-called Tilden-Hayes Compromise resulted in an end to Reconstruction and the beginning of Jim Crow. But I want you young people to know this. All of that occurred by one vote. Reconstruction came to an end by one vote. 185 to 184. Rutherford B. Hayes became president of the United States with a vote of 185 in the Electoral College to 184. That is what ended Reconstruction. And the committee that gave him those votes was a 15-member committee. The committee vote was 8-7 to give the votes to Hayes because Hayes promised that he would bring an end to Reconstruction. So one vote ended Reconstruction. One vote started Jim Crow. And because of that one vote, there were 95 years between number 8 and number 9 members of Congress from South Carolina who happen to be people of color. So I want to say to the young people who are there today, one vote has determined a whole lot in history. Their one vote can mean the difference in freedom and justice or community or chaos. So just remember as you are working through what to do in this election year, your one vote matters. Participate and make sure that your one vote will not result in what that one vote resulted in back in the 1870s. And finally, I want to say to them, when I got elected to Congress, I ran against the advice of a lot of people who told me I had no chance of winning. They told me I had no chance of winning because I had lost 3 times before. And a friend of mine said to me, what are you going to do now? You know what they say, 3 strikes and you're out. I told my friend, that's a baseball rule. And nobody should live their lives by baseball rules. So I want to say to the young people there, what your grandparents, your guardians, your parents have always said to you, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. They didn't say try one more time or 2 more times. There's no numerical limitation on how many times you should try. If I had quit after losing the 3rd time, I never would have become the number 3 guy in the United States House of Representatives. So to all of you, please stay engaged, learn what's happening around you, and dedicate yourselves to making this country a better place, not just for you, but for those who are destined to come after you. So thank you so much for all that you're doing, and thanks to those who are guiding you along this way. Let's make sure that when we wake up the morning after the November elections, that you've done your part to make this country a better place. Thank you and Godspeed.
Thank you so much, Congressman Clyburn. May I ask you one question?
Sure.
Okay. Well, with 2 parts to that question. Young people are facing a lot of challenges, what we call in civic influencers generational gerrymandering. which is a set of rules and laws that are trying to remove polling sites from their campuses, trying to deny student IDs for voter IDs, trying to deny many of their voting access potential. And so we're helping equip them. But it can be very dispiriting. The second thing is, and so part of what we've seen in the last, say, few months is a lot of young people feeling this is going to be impossible. However, would you say there has been a shift that you've observed in the population and in young people particularly getting excited to get involved and fight generational gerrymandering and getting themselves registered and getting themselves out to vote?
Are you frozen?
No, I'm here. You appear to be frozen. Can you see me?
Yes, I see it and hear you very well.
Okay. Did you hear the question?
Yes, I think.
Okay, so please, it's your turn to answer.
Well, let me tell you this. I remember my dad used to say to me all the time, and I thought it didn't make a whole lot of sense. But the longer I lived, the more I understand what he was saying to me.
No.
That the darkest time of the night is that moment just before dawn. And so I would say to young people, no matter how dark it may seem, just think about what has happened in this country in the last 9 or 10 days. We have seen a massive shift in the sentiments of this country in the last 10 days. I talked to so many young people who 2 weeks ago were telling me they had no reason to vote. They didn't feel any hope. They thought that the country was wired against them. Those same young people over the last 10 days are now speaking differently. So no matter how dark or dreary it may seem to you, you must keep working. Jesse Jackson used to say, keep hope alive. And if you do that, you know, there's a scripture that says, keep your lamps trimmed and burning so as to be ready when the bridegroom comes. So you don't give up and drop out. You keep working. You know what your dreams and aspirations are? Keep working. No matter how dark it may seem. Who knows? That may be the moment just before dawn. I think Kamala Harris will agree with that today.
Thank you. Thank you for those wonderful words, Congressman. And glad you're home safely. And glad you enjoyed your trip with the president on Air Force One. And we wish you, and it's so inspiring for young people. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Good luck, guys.
Thank you. So, you know, James Clyburn has 39 honorary doctorates. And he also won the NAACP's highest award, the Spingarn Medal. And so it is just with joy that we are able to bring this generation and the next, and the change maker generation of the civil rights movement to help today, to ask you to support all of these young people. And I will now present some evidence of just the dramatic shift that's happening. Before I do that, Elise, Lauren, and Zenith are in the audience. So I want to make sure that I get to them. And so you find them. But please put the spotlight on Nadia. Oh, okay. Hey, Lauren. Hey, Zenith. Nadia, we'll get to you in a moment. So I am so proud to introduce this incredible aunt and niece who, well, I don't want to steal your thunder, Lauren, tell us who you are and who's in this.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Parker. I'm from Alexandria, Virginia. My pronouns are she, her. And I was born in 1980, technically at the very end of Generation X. So that's another way of saying at the very beginning of the dawn of the millennial era. So I'm really on the cusp of these two generations, and I often recognize characteristics of both of these generations in myself. And I'm very excited to be here with my niece, Zenith Parker. And Zen is a member of Generation Z. And we're here to share a cool anecdote just about the passion and excitement of young people in voting. As most of you probably know, President Biden backed out of the presidential campaign race 2 weekends ago. And who was the very first person to text me about this news event in all caps and with images in my iMessages? None other than Zen. That Sunday afternoon, we exchanged several messages, and Zen texted me facetiously but for effect one message, and I quote, "I'd give a limb to be 18 right now and registered to vote." And I responded saying that I loved the sentiment behind that, but let's keep your limbs. And I thought, how cool is that? That a 15-year-old teenager, not even of age to vote, is following our presidential campaign closely and feels so strongly about it, and so strongly wants to participate in our political process already. So, we just lost our light.
That's all right. Zen.
That was poor timing.
No.
Zen, can you share? Yeah. Can you share why you wish you were 18 and registered to vote?
Hi, everyone. So the reason I wish I was kind of 18 and registered to vote is because for me, I feel like the upcoming presidential elections are especially very important to me because I'm a Black woman in America and I identify under the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And I would say that in my life experience that people like me have faced discrimination in laws and have been specifically targeted against in various different ways. And I feel like I kind of have a duty, not just for myself, but other people like me and for my community to stay informed and, stay up to date what's going on so I can kind of keep myself educated, but also other people around me who might not have the resources to do so. But I think I'm not going to be 18, I want to be able to cast a vote and participate more because I feel like I am in some ways super limited by my age, and not just like legally, but also in some more social and cultural ways. And I feel like everyone else is in people who are older than me, which is kind of everyone, that they're under this impression that, Gen Z doesn't take the time to be educated. And since we are so young, we don't have that much life experience. So therefore we can't really speak on issues. And I feel like we do have opinions and we are educated and we do care.
Wonderful. Thank you. When I heard that anecdote, I couldn't wait to meet you. And I'm glad you came. We're running behind, but thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Zen.
Of course.
I'm going to ask people for a favor to stay a little longer because this is the moment to ride the momentum that you've heard from Jada, from Javon, what you've heard from Zen and Lauren, because we need to fund 1,000 civic influencers on these tipping point campuses, which is $1,500. That's 1/3 is 500, 2/3 is 1,000, and the full thing is 1,500 through November. At minimum, please, in honor of the 4 million 18-year-olds who will be able to register to vote this year, $18. But please, give with your heart. Try to make it happen because these young people can prevent the one vote margin that Congressman Clyburn talked about. So, on message, please bring Nadia. I am so thrilled. Nadia, hi. And Nadia's 2 daughters that I've spent time with, and they're coming in from San Francisco. So Nadia, the floor is yours.
Okay,
Hello, everyone from Northern California. We are so excited to be here and to forever champion civic influencers. If I think back to the election of 2016, one of my hardest moments as a parent was to tell my two girls the next morning how the election went out. And so we as a family committed ourselves to doing everything we possibly could to engage everyone and especially young people. So my girls have basically grown up with civic influencers and have really had the opportunity to engage and participate, even though they're not yet 18, and even helped with some social media strategies. So enough of me, but like here, I'll introduce Serena and then Rihanna.
Hi, yeah, I'm Serena, and my sister.
Oh,
Serena, you are the volleyball fanatic, is that correct?
They
both are. Us.
Both of you, okay. Because I am so proud of you. You're entering college in September. You are a force of nature, and so is Rihanna. So thank you for joining us. So floor is yours, Serena.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm Serena, and my sister Rihanna and I are excited to share a bit about the youth perspective on this election. So prior to recent events, many of my peers and those of my generation felt apathetic and not motivated to vote or get involved, especially because just after events like the Trump and Biden debate. And so I've noticed that ever since Biden decided not to run, there's been a new wave of excitement and enthusiasm, specifically amongst youth. And I think this largely has to do with Kamala Harris being younger and being a woman of color, which is super new for our country and inspiring to me as a woman of color as well. And this is especially exciting for myself and many of my peers who will actually be voting for the first time this election. So I'm about to turn 18.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris has also really trending on social media like TikTok with her coconut tree meme, especially to the songs from Charlie XCX's new album Brat, making her part of the Brat Summer, which is trending on social media with our generation. So if you haven't seen that, I suggest you check it out. But this has definitely brought a lot of humor and just excitement from our generation to get behind this election and turn out to vote. So also things like Kamala Harris bringing up Megan Thee Stallion and other artists with her has brought like a connectability, because there's nothing more that our generation likes to connect over than music and dancing. So super excited for this election.
And you know what's so funny, Rihanna? You're 15, correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. Is that Jada had to leave to go to dance class. One of the things that our model is in co-creating with young creators like you and Serena is these three elements. It has to inspire, it has to inform, and it has to entertain. Inspire, inform, entertain. And I thank you for all the hard work each of you has done, Serena, Rihanna, and Nadia. We could not do this without you, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So let me introduce you to two of the current powerful. In Pennsylvania, we saved them for you because that is the biggest battleground state. And so please let me welcome Ruby and Davida. Hey, Davida, how are you? Hi, Ruby. Sorry for the delay. Sorry for the delay. You are worth waiting for. So my first question, Davida, the first question, why and how long have you been doing what you're doing?
Yeah, so when I first came to campus, my campus wasn't very active. Voter engagement was low. And so I was really civically minded. So I wanted to start something in my college. And I started in my junior year, and I'm going and incoming my senior year, so about a year and a half.
And where are you?
I'm in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
All right. Ruby, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm currently a rising senior at the University of Pittsburgh. I came from not only coming from Pennsylvania as a swing state, but also a swing county, Bucks County, which is right outside of Philadelphia. And growing up, my town is a very politically contentious area. We made national news for having, trans issues in school, book banning, fiery PTA meetings. And so kind of growing up with that political engagement, it made me really interested in joining civic influencers when I got to college. And so I've been with civic influencers for about 3 years now, and I'm super passionate about just engaging my peers.
And what's been important about the fact that our work is not cyclical? It's not one-off. 3 years, 2 years. Has that been important to your own development and your ability to motivate your peers? What do you think, Ruby?
Yes, it's definitely been very, very important. I think it's exactly like you say, it's not just about the election every 4 years, it's about the midterm elections, the primaries, and keeping people constantly engaged. So we tried to do that in a lot of different ways. We have different voting activities, trivia nights. I actually host a political news podcast with a collaboration with our school's student newspaper. And we just talk about political issues that are especially relevant for Pitt voters in, in a way that's relevant to youth and relevant to them being in Pennsylvania, relevant to them being students. So yeah.
Wonderful. Davida, what's your majors?
So I have 3 majors. So my major is social media strategies, legal studies, and environmental studies.
And tell me, since you're an influencer, what are your social media strategies that will help young people on campuses, these tipping point campuses like yours, in swing districts and states, to get involved and to register and to vote?
I think it's just connecting to what youth is passionate about, right? So my campus, we are going through an environmental crisis. And so really talking about that issue and how voting can actually help with the climate crisis and really connecting to issues that youth are really engaged with.
And has it been easy over the last year for you, Ruby? And has it been easy for you too, Davida, to do this work? And have you seen a shift?
I would say there's definitely been a shift. It was not easy at all. I think sometimes people are just very apathetic. They're like, no, my vote I don't really see how it's going to help. And there was kind of just this feeling of like dread and this weight over people where there's a little bit of hopelessness. They don't feel represented by the candidates. But recently, I've definitely noticed a huge shift. People who I know are not very interested in following the political news, they're all of a sudden coming to me and asking how they can change their voter registration to Pennsylvania because they know it's a swing state. They're asking, me about how to research the different political candidates and all of that. So it's been very exciting and really great to see.
And Davida, you have been active in creating tools, etc. Were people using them, and what's the difference now?
Yeah, so before even this last summer, I didn't really see that much people really digging into the work I've been doing, which was kind of discouraging. But it's so exciting right now, especially in the summer, to see people saving the guides I used or even going back into, because I can see through my links how people are engaging with it. And so I think that even though at first it was again, very hard to see that no one was really engaging, all the work that I put in prior is really coming to fruition right now.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you did, your dedication, the love you have for democracy, for your peers, the talents you both have. It's just wonderful. So thank you so much for being here. So folks, we need to fund a lot of Davidas, a lot of Rubies. We need to equip them. We need to place folks on these tipping point campuses throughout the state of Pennsylvania, throughout Michigan, throughout Wisconsin, throughout Arizona and Nevada and North Carolina. This is the moment. One of the things that is interesting. Oh, can you bring Davida back for 1 minute? One of the things that's really interesting is that the passion that you heard from Davida is also happening in Ohio. And so, Davida, can you explain the passion with the nomination of the vice president candidate for the Republican Party?
Yeah, so this is not only happening with in the DNC. I think that also with Republicans, we have JD Vance, who has becoming into spotlight recently. And I think that what's engaging youth there is the idea of cryptocurrency and everything that he stands for, because he was part of the VC and venture capitalist surroundings with his political affiliation. So we're seeing a lot more people who are interested in cryptocurrency and just VC culture really navigating towards him.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you. So young people are getting active and engaged. There's been a shift in both parties. There's been a shift in young people connecting either for cryptocurrency, connecting on racial justice or LGBTQ justice or preventing climate catastrophe and gun violence. This is the moment to empower them and equip them. We are nonpartisan. We're a 501c3. All of your donations are tax deductible. They will try to make sure young people understand the issues and connect with the candidates that best promote their values and the change that they want to see in the future. This is not static. This is empowering a generation to do the kind of reverse mentoring that I mentioned before. And I hope I played my part when I was younger in reverse mentoring Ralph. And it's our turn to hear what Jada has to say, and Javon has to say, and Ruby has to say, and Serena, and Rihanna, and DeVito. And you can make that happen. We're begging you to empower, take this moment. This is the moment that we cannot let go. We've never seen such a moment where young people are excited in both parties. Serious thing, but what a wonderful thing for our democracy. So we're going to be bringing on Elise in a moment, or Erin, to make an ask. But there's someone who's also asking for us, and I'm going to share my screen so that you can hear from him.
Hi, I'm Richard Blumenthal, United States Senator for Connecticut. Very excited and proud to be joining the Civic Influencer Power Awards event, even though it is in this somewhat impersonal way. I am with you in spirit because your mission is so critically important to the future of our democracy. Engaging young people is vital to promote causes like preventing gun violence, sustaining reproductive rights, and enlarging voting rights. Causes that have animated and energized my own career as a U.S. Senator and as Attorney General before that. I want to thank everybody in this audience for supporting this vital mission, which is so important now, more important than ever before, because our democracy is under threat as never before. This nonpartisan, nonprofit organization can really play a role in engaging and inspiring young people to help save our democracy. That is no exaggeration. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut. And now, after you hear from Elise or Erin, we ask you to stay because Governor Dean is here. Other folks are here to answer questions and get really down in the conversation of what we can do to make sure young people register and vote. Early vote and fight generational gerrymandering. Get their student IDs compliant with voter IDs. Get polling sites on campus. Locate their polling sites. Plan to vote, and all the things that we know work, because we're data-driven, and each of these things has been tested. So, Elise?
Thanks so much, Maxim, and thank you everyone who joined us. We are so encouraged to see this phenomenal excitement tonight. And thank you to everyone who has already capitalized on that excitement and made a gift tonight. Bruce, Heidi, Beth, Harley, Dennis, Arlene, and others. We see you and thank you so much for your support. Our young CIs, some of whom you've met tonight, are organizing to protect all of our freedoms, and they need your support for their voter registration and get out the vote efforts. This is a different moment from the last time that we met. The stakes are higher and the need for action is immediate since the race changed a few weeks ago. That's why we're asking for all of your continued support today. One way you can do that and make an immediate impact is by starting a monthly donation of just $18. $18 represents the voting power of those 4 million 17-year-olds who turn 18 every year and step into their role as eligible voters. And of course, if you are able to give more, we will happily use it. A gift of $500 can fund the stipend for a civic influencer. If you fund 1, 2, 5, or 100 civic influencers, it will help us to grow our youth voter movement. And because a generous donor has offered to match all donations 100%, gifts made today will go even further. And we will show you a QR code, and you will also find the donate link in the chat, so you can use both of those to find where to give to civic influencers. And of course, it will be included in the follow-up materials sent after this discussion. Lastly, I want to encourage each of you to reach out to your personal networks. So think of friends, family, coworkers, neighbors. Try to identify 5 people in your life who you believe would be passionate about supporting our cause. Email us an introduction or forward our follow-up materials after the event, which will include the video recording, so you can share with them Civic Influencers message, as well as the powerful message from Representative Clyburn and Howard Dean and our great civic influencers you've heard from tonight. Thank you, everyone. And now I'm going to turn the stage over to Aaron Barnhart, who will let us know, who will read out some of the questions that have been shared in the chat. I know we have a lot.
Thank you, Elise. Hi, everybody. Feel free to continue putting questions in the chat or in the Q&A, and I can share some of those questions now. One of the ones I'm seeing, and I would love to hear from Governor Dean and Maxim and some of the other amazing guests on our call tonight, is how do you override some of the concerns about seeing past elections where popular vote turns out, but electoral college, counters that? What do you say to young voters who are like, yes, I'm ready, let's mobilize, and I want to make sure that we win? What are some of the thoughts there?
Can we spotlight Governor Dean too, please? W muted, and can we spot? Yeah, hi. And folks, Governor Dean knows this stuff like the back of his hand. We've been working on it, and we just want to hear your wisdom.
The key is getting as many people to vote in the key states as you possibly can. When there's voter rejection, and there's been that game has been played for a long time, people will sometimes put up signs directing people to the wrong place for polling and all these kinds of stuff. So as an influencer, first you have to be sure you know where the polling place is, and don't rely on signs. Call up somebody or find somebody you trust in one of the campaigns and find out. Secondly, we call this flooding the zone. It's not enough to get 6 people to go down. You need to get 60, because there's a limit to how much people can cheat. And thirdly, it is possible, and the Republicans have figured this out easily, to win the popular vote and lose the election, which has happened about 6 times relatively recently. And the only way to overcome that is just to get more people to vote. And it actually does work. This is going to come down to, as I said in my earlier talk, maybe 9 states at the most. And you've just got to get people out. And the other point that was made, I think, by one of the organizers, was there are other people on the ballot, and they're your allies. They need people to get out to vote for them too. So don't just connect to whatever campaign you think is important. Look and see who else is on that ballot, and go see who's running their campaign. In fact, if you've got time, people always say, oh, I want to work in the president's campaign and all this. No, go work in the school board's campaign. You'll be the campaign manager, the PR person, and the finance chair all at the same, and you won't get paid anything for it, but you'll learn more about politics than you could possibly imagine. So you have to consider, this is when you're building democracy, you're not just voting for the president of the United States. That's what everybody gets interested in. It really matters who the school board is. And if you don't think it is, if you come from one of those states where the books have been banned, you'll find out in a hurry that it does make a difference. So build a coalition. This is what I did at the DNC. The 50-state strategy was about, do not, just because Kansas may not be a state that's going to vote in my way next time, you don't give up on Kansas. You may win a congressional seat. You may win a school board. Those school board people later in their career will go on to be the state house. In fact, if you get really good at this, you may be the one who goes on and ends up as a state representative, which is exactly what happened to me. I started out working in a presidential campaign and ended up, a couple of years later running for the state legislature, and then on up the line. So, organization is everything. Organization is everything. It's not enough to give speeches. It's not enough to knock on doors and get out the vote. Although if you don't do that, you're going to lose. Organization is what the Democratic Party has not been so good at. And we need to be better at it. And you need to be good at it. It's how well organized you are and how many contacts you made. And do not forget the people at the bottom of the ballot, because they have their own organization and they'll get out those people too.
Right. So let me thank you, Governor Dean. Very, very important. Our organization, and why I'm asking folks to support our civic influencers, 1,000 in every battleground state and district, is because we have the granular data. We know the issues. You've heard Davida talk about climate change. There have been gun violence. There are folks who are very interested in clean water, power grid issues, all kinds of things that are local issues that are driving young people to be concerned and to be active. When they are equipped by us and trained with data, trained with connecting with media, the campus media telling their stories, we amplify it so that their voices are heard. And that is so important by equipping them. And so we are really helping build a skill set that exactly what Governor Dean just said. And so when you support them and you get them into this multi-year program of organizing their peers, the benefits are amazing. And just so you know, when we give Maxwell Frost, who was the national organizer for March for Our Lives, our Cool to Consciousness Award, he was not the Gen Z member of Congress that he is today. So I think the power is well within your grasp and people want to see it. And so we ask you to help support these young folks, particularly in the swing states and districts, so that they can shift power and protect our democracy and to protect their freedoms. Are there other questions, Erin?
I've got one last one I think we have time for that I think it's a good one for us to end on here, which is, how can I share this with like-minded people who may be able to get their communities out to vote?
Is that for me or for Governor Dean or both?
I'd love to hear from both. Governor Dean, what do you think? What's the best way for folks to spread the word, especially to young people who are mobilized and ready to take action?
I think I sort of answered that question, and it was really provided by one of your organizers, which is go and see who's down ballot. Well, they all have a stake, and everybody who wants to be a judge or a city council member is going to know this. They're going to need 300 more votes than they have, right? Or 300 or 600 more people. Well, if somebody goes and votes for the city council, believe me, they're going to vote for president. So you do not fail to. I'm so glad you mentioned Maxwell Frost, because he is a superstar. And I know we only have money to do the swing states, and that's what we should focus on for this election. But we do not want to forget places like Florida, because Florida used to be a Democratic state. The thing I most admired about Obama's campaign, which is one of the best ones I ever saw, was winning Florida. And I know the guy that did it, and he's just a genius. So anyway, look at the down ballot races, get them out. They are all trying to get their votes out. If they all get their votes out, they're probably going to vote or write up the ticket. It's a little harder when you're knocking on doors. When you're talking to students, they're only going to know about the the president and all that stuff. We don't want to avoid them at all. We don't want to ignore them at all. But if you're building a coalition, there's a gold mine in the lower down offices that nobody's ever heard of, because they all need votes too. And if they're going to be any good, they'll go out and get those votes, and they'll help you, and you can guide them so you can, in a sense, coordinate.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
If you are referring, Governor Dean, to the wonderful Patrick Hidalgo, who helped in Florida, and as you may recall, historically, Barack Obama won Florida.
Yep.
And won the Latinx community and the Black community, the Hispanic, the Caribbean diaspora, etc. And it shifted, because that was a swing state, as was Ohio. We were founded in Ohio, folks. And the Ohio of that period is different today, but young people are getting energized in Ohio. And the last thing I will play, will close out with a CI from Ohio. But it's really important to recognize how both parties have now generational shifts in candidates that are exciting young people. It is so important So important to get young people out. Our strategy is very local. We call ourselves a national organization that is hyper local on tipping point campuses, HBCUs, community colleges, trade, technical, and vocational schools in these swing districts that have been won. Congress by 6 votes. Congress. Imagine a coin toss for the legislative body in Virginia. Coin toss because it was tied. We're making voting easy. We're making folks realize this is not insurmountable. And they can win and have their voices heard. Thank you all for attending. I'm closing out with the wonderful Victoria, and you'll hear what she has to say about her work in Ohio.
Semester, I worked a lot to ensure that the civic engagement work I engaged in during my time with civic influencers would continue beyond my graduation from Miami University. Taking on a more supervisory and advisory role, I trained newly hired fellows within the leadership office to register voters, think critically about engaging students in their efforts, and brainstorm programming for next semester. We held voter registration drives, carried out social media plans, and held opportunities for students to get involved in their college community through service and civic engagement. Although we ran into a lot of barriers such as lack of engagement and interest, this semester was still extremely beneficial as it forced all of us to reconsider what is effective in our efforts and strategy to bring a spirit of civic engagement to the student body. Additionally, the ever-changing landscape of Ohio politics created an uncertainty around the state of congressional districts within the state, and accordingly, the Ohio primary. This also forced us to be flexible and anticipatory in how we educated voters about civic engagement. This work allows civic engagement fellows and the university to identify holes in their own civic engagement efforts and responsibility within the institution. This is important because creating engaged community members increases the critical thinking, analytical skills, and empathy of university students. This semester, I worked a lot to ensure that the civic engagement work I engaged in during my time with civic influencers would continue beyond my graduation from Miami University. Taking on a more supervisory and advisory role, I trained newly hired fellows within the leadership office to register voters, think critically about engaging students in their efforts, and brainstorm programming for next semester. We held voter registration drives, carried out social media plans, and held opportunities for students to get involved in their college community through service and civic engagement. Although we ran into a lot of barriers such as lack of engagement and interest, this semester was still extremely beneficial as it forced all of us to reconsider what is effective in our efforts and strategy to bring a spirit of civic engagement to the student body. Additionally, the ever-changing landscape of Ohio politics created an uncertainty around the state of congressional districts within the state, and accordingly, the Ohio primary. This also forced us to be flexible and anticipatory in how we educated voters about civic engagement. This work allows civic engagement fellows and the university to identify holes in their own civic engagement efforts and responsibility within the institution. This is important because creating engaged community members increases the critical thinking, analytical skills, and empathy of university students. In turn, this creates smarter, kinder, and more holistic students and alumni for these institutions. In all, I feel confident that I have left the drive and efforts for civic engagement within our office stronger than they were when I first joined.
So it is ongoing. We're working with grassroots, young people, and we're working with treetops, university presidents, chancellors, provosts, and professors. This is our secret sauce. This is our democracy's secret sauce, because democracy is not a sprint nor a marathon. This is the 2024 Olympics. It is a relay where one generation passes the baton of our democracy to the next one. And that's what civic influencers are doing. So thank you all very much for joining us, and good night.